The Appalachian Mountains rose like jagged teeth against the twilight sky, their dense forests cloaked in an unsettling silence. Nestled deep within this wilderness was Helltown, an abandoned settlement with a dark history. Jack Thorne, the seasoned leader of a renowned paranormal investigation team, gazed out the window of their van as they approached the ghost town. His team included Elena, a psychic medium, Dr. Caldwell, a skeptical scientist with a background in quantum physics, Marcus, a tech expert specializing in ghost hunting equipment, and Sarah, a journalist documenting their journey. "Are you sure about this, Jack?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. "The stories about this place are disturbing." Jack nodded, his expression grim. "We have to uncover the truth, Sarah. There's something sinister here, and it's our job to find out what it is." The van rattled over the rough road leading into Helltown. The buildings, once homes and shops, now stood as crumbling relics of the past, overtaken by nature and time. The air was thick with an oppressive, otherworldly energy that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. "Feels like we're not alone," Elena murmured, her eyes closed as she reached out with her psychic senses. "There are many spirits here, and they're not happy." Marcus parked the van in front of what used to be the town hall. "Let's set up base here," Jack said. "We'll start our investigation from the center of town and work our way out." The team unloaded their equipment, their movements efficient and practiced. Marcus set up cameras and motion sensors, while Dr. Caldwell calibrated the EMP detectors and other scientific instruments. Elena and Jack walked through the building, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "I can feel them watching us," Elena whispered. "They're curious, but there's also anger. A lot of anger." As night fell, the team gathered around a table strewn with maps and data printouts. "We've got to be methodical," Jack said. "This place has a history of disappearances and sightings of strange creatures. We need to document everything and be ready for anything." Sarah switched on her recorder. "Let's start with the history. What do we know about Helltown?" Jack pulled out a file. Helltown was abandoned in the 1970s. The government claimed it was due to hazardous waste, but locals have always believed there was more to it. Stories of demonic activity, shadowy figures, and unexplained phenomena have persisted for decades. The most disturbing accounts involve people going missing and sightings of crawlers, twisted, humanoid creatures, and skinwalkers, entities from Native American folklore that can mimic human form. Dr. Caldwell shook his head. "It sounds like a mix of urban legends and hysteria. But given what we've encountered in the past, we can't dismiss anything." Marcus tapped on his laptop, bringing up a map of the area. "I've overlaid reports of sightings and disappearances with the town's layout. There's a pattern. They all converge on an area near the old church." Elena shivered. "The church. That's where the veil between our world and the other side is thinnest." Jack stood up. "Then that's where we'll start." They gathered their equipment and headed towards the church. The night was unnaturally still, the only sound their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. As they approached the building, a cold wind swept through, carrying with it whispers that seemed to come from all directions. Inside, the church was dark and foreboding. Their flashlights revealed rows of empty pews and an altar covered in dust. Elena moved towards the altar, her face pale and eyes wide. "This place, it's a focal point for the energy here. Something terrible happened in this town, and it's left a scar." Suddenly, Marcus's motion detector beeped. "We've got movement," he said, his voice tense. "Something's here." The team froze, their eyes scanning the darkness. A shadow flickered at the edge of their vision, and Elena gasped. "It's a shadow man," she whispered. "A malevolent entity drawn to fear and suffering." Jack raised his camera, the night vision mode revealing a dark figure standing at the back of the church. It was tall and featureless, its presence exuding an aura of dread. "We've got to document this," Jack said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. As they recorded the entity, it began to move towards them, its form shifting and flickering. The air grew colder, and the whispers intensified. "Stay calm," Jack ordered. "Marcus, get the EMP ready. Dr. Caldwell, keep an eye on the sensors." The Shadow Man stopped a few feet away from them, its presence almost overwhelming. Elena stepped forward, her voice firm. "We mean you no harm. We just want to understand what happened here." For a moment, the entity seemed to waver, and then it vanished, leaving the team in stunned silence. "Did we get that?" Jack asked. Marcus nodded. "Every second. This is groundbreaking." As they packed up their equipment, the sense of unease lingered. "This is just the beginning," Jack said. "There's something much bigger going on here. We need to dig deeper." The team returned to their base, their minds racing with questions. What had the government really been doing in Helltown? And what connection did the Shadow Man and the other entities have to the town's dark history? As they prepared for the next day's investigation, none of them could shake the feeling that they were being watched. Helltown's secrets were starting to surface, and the team was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, the team gathered around a small table in the town hall, their faces drawn with tension and anticipation. The previous night's encounter with the Shadow Man had left them more determined than ever to uncover the secrets of Helltown. "We need to dig into the history of this place," Sarah said, flipping through her notes. "There must be records, old newspapers, anything that can give us clues." Marcus nodded, setting up his laptop. "I'll see what I can find online. Maybe there's something we've missed." Jack leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "We should also talk to the locals. There are still a few people living in the nearby towns who might know more about Helltown's history." Elena, who had been quiet since their encounter at the church, looked up. "I can sense that there's more to this place than we realize. The spirits here are restless, but they're also trying to tell us something." Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his skepticism ever present, but tempered by the undeniable evidence they'd gathered. "Let's not forget to maintain a scientific approach. We need to gather data, document everything, and remain objective." The team divided their tasks. Sarah and Elena would visit the nearby towns to gather first-hand accounts, while Jack, Marcus, and Dr. Caldwell would continue their investigation in Helltown. Sarah and Elena drove to the closest town, a small community called Harper's Ridge. The townspeople were wary, but eventually, they found an old man named Harold who was willing to talk. "Helltown, you say?" Harold's voice was raspy, his eyes distant as he recalled the past. "I remember when it was abandoned. People said it was because of the chemicals, but I never believed that. There were always strange things happening there, even before it was deserted." "Strange things?" Sarah prompted, her recorder running. "Disappearances, sightings of creatures that didn't belong in this world. My grandmother used to tell stories about the skinwalkers and shadowy figures that would appear at night. She said the town was cursed." Elena's eyes widened. "Cursed? By what?" Harold shook his head. "No one knows for sure. Some say it was the land itself. Others say it was something brought by the people who settled there. Whatever it was powerful and dangerous." Meanwhile, back in Helltown, Jack, Marcus, and Dr. Caldwell returned to the church. The oppressive atmosphere from the night before seemed even more intense in the daylight. "We need to find any documents that might have been left behind," Jack said. "Records, diaries, anything that can give us insight into what happened here." They split up, each taking a different part of the building. Marcus found an old ledger in a dusty cabinet, its pages filled with entries that spoke of everyday life, until the entries abruptly stopped. "Look at this," he said, showing the ledger to Jack and Dr. Caldwell. The last entry is dated just before the town was abandoned. It mentions strange occurrences and a growing sense of dread. Dr. Caldwell frowned. We need more than this. We need to find out what triggered the abandonment. They continued their search, eventually finding a hidden compartment under the altar. Inside was a collection of old letters and journals. As they read through the fragile pages, a picture began to form of a town plagued by inexplicable events, strange lights in the sky, people disappearing, and sightings of inhuman creatures. This matches the stories we've heard, Jack said, but it's still not enough. We need to go deeper. That night, the team reconvened at the town hall to share their findings. Sarah played back her recording of Harold's account, and they pored over the documents from the church. It's all pointing to something supernatural, Elena said. Something ancient and malevolent. But we still don't know what it is, or how to stop it. Dr. Caldwell tapped a finger on the table. We need to explore the surrounding areas, particularly the old mines and the forest. If there's a source of this energy, it's likely hidden there. As they planned their next steps, Marcus's laptop beeped with an incoming message. He opened it, his eyes widening as he read. "Guys, you need to see this," he said, turning the screen to face the others. There are reports of military activity in the area, dating back to the time when Helltown was abandoned. It looks like the government was involved in more than just clearing out hazardous waste. Jack's expression hardened. This changes everything. If the government was involved, they might have been trying to contain whatever was happening here. We need to find out what they knew and why they abandoned the town. The team's determination grew as they realized the scope of the mystery they were facing. Helltown was not just a haunted place. It was a battleground between the natural and the supernatural, with the government potentially hiding crucial information. The next morning, they set out to explore the old mines. The entrance was partially collapsed, but they managed to clear a path. Inside, the air was cold and damp, and the darkness seemed almost alive. "Stay close and keep your lights on," Jack instructed. "We don't know what we're dealing with down here." As they ventured deeper, the feeling of being watched intensified. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and strange noises echoed through the tunnels. Elena stopped suddenly, her face pale. "There's something here," she whispered. "Something powerful and angry." Before they could react, a loud crash echoed through the tunnel, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. The team struggled to keep their balance as the walls shook and debris fell around them. "We need to get out of here," Dr. Caldwell shouted, but before they could move, a dark figure appeared at the end of the tunnel. It was a crawler, its twisted form illuminated by their flashlights. Jack raised his camera, capturing the creature as it advanced towards them. "Keep moving," he yelled. "We have to get out of here." The team scrambled to escape, the crawler close behind. As they emerged into the daylight, the ground stopped shaking and the creature vanished, leaving them breathless and shaken. "We're in over our heads," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "But we can't stop now. We have to find out what's happening here and put an end to it." Jack nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. "We're not leaving until we uncover the truth. Helltown's secrets are starting to surface, and we're going to bring them to light, no matter the cost." The team gathered at the entrance of the old mines, their resolve hardening after their previous night's encounter. Each member was armed with their respective equipment: cameras, EMF detectors, thermal imaging cameras, and personal protective gear. The tension was palpable as they prepared to venture deeper into the darkness. "Remember, stick together and stay alert," Jack instructed, his voice steady but laced with concern. "We have no idea what else is down there." The entrance to the mines loomed ahead, a gaping maw of darkness. Jack led the way, followed closely by Marcus, who kept a watchful eye on his laptop's readings. Sarah and Dr. Caldwell were in the middle, with Elena bringing up the rear, her senses heightened and alert for any signs of supernatural activity. As they descended, the air grew colder and damper. The walls of the mine were slick with moisture, and the floor was uneven, forcing them to move cautiously. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance and shift at the edge of their vision. Marcus monitored the EMF detector, which began to spike as they ventured deeper. "I'm getting some strong readings," he said, his voice echoing off the walls. "Whatever's down here, it's powerful." Dr. Caldwell nodded, adjusting his thermal imaging camera. "Let's document everything. We need as much evidence as possible." Elena paused, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the darkness ahead. "There's something here," she whispered. "I can feel it." The team pressed on, their footsteps echoing in the silent tunnel. Suddenly, they heard a low, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. Jack raised his hand, signaling for the team to stop. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Everyone nodded, their eyes wide with fear and anticipation. Jack motioned for them to continue, and they moved forward slowly, their senses on high alert. The growling grew louder, reverberating through the tunnel like a primal warning. As they rounded a corner, their flashlights illuminated a large cavern. In the center of the cavern stood a massive stone structure, covered in strange symbols and markings. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the temperature dropped even further. "This must be it," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "The source of the energy." Elena stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the stone structure. "It's a gateway," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A gateway to something ancient and malevolent." Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, and the air was filled with a high-pitched, otherworldly screech. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and the growling intensified. The team formed a circle, their backs to each other, as they tried to identify the source of the noise. From the darkness emerged a figure, its body twisted and grotesque. It was a crawler, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The creature moved with unnatural speed, lunging at the team with razor-sharp claws. Jack raised his camera, capturing the terrifying scene as Marcus fired his taser at the creature. The crawler screeched in pain and recoiled, giving the team a moment to regroup. "We need to get out of here," Dr. Caldwell shouted, but before they could move, more creatures emerged from the shadows. Skinwalkers, their forms shifting and changing, surrounded the team, their eyes filled with malice. The team fought back, using their equipment to fend off the creatures. Jack's camera captured the chaos, the images blurry and distorted as he moved. Sarah swung a makeshift weapon, striking a skinwalker and sending it sprawling. Elena focused her energy, her psychic abilities amplifying as she faced the creatures. "Back to the shadows," she commanded, her voice filled with authority. The creatures hesitated, their forms wavering as if caught between two worlds. Taking advantage of the momentary pause, Jack shouted, "This way." He led the team towards a narrow passage on the other side of the cavern. They moved quickly, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they tried to escape the pursuing creatures. The passage was tight and winding, forcing them to move single file. The growling and screeching echoed behind them, growing louder with each passing second. They stumbled over loose rocks and debris, their flashlights flickering as the battery power waned. "Keep moving," Jack urged, his voice strained. "We're almost out." The passage opened into another cavern, this one smaller, but just as ominous. The team barely had time to catch their breath before the creatures appeared again, their eyes glowing in the darkness. "We need to seal the passage," Marcus shouted. "It's the only way to stop them." Jack and Dr. Caldwell grabbed a large boulder, straining with the effort to move it into place. Sarah and Elena joined in, their combined strength finally shifting the boulder enough to block the entrance. The creatures slammed against the boulder, their growls and screeches muffled, but still terrifying. The team backed away, their hearts pounding as they realized they were temporarily safe. "We need to find another way out," Dr. Caldwell said, his voice calm but urgent. "This place is a death trap." Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the cavern. "There has to be another exit. We can't stay here." They moved cautiously, their flashlights illuminating the path ahead. The cavern seemed to stretch on forever, the walls covered in more of the strange symbols and markings. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and the temperature continued to drop. As they explored, they found a series of tunnels branching off from the main cavern. Each tunnel seemed to lead deeper into the earth, and the team had to make a quick decision. "We need to split up," Jack said. "We'll cover more ground that way. Marcus, you and Dr. Caldwell take the left tunnel. Sarah, Elena, and I will take the right. Stay in contact and be careful." With a nod, the team split up, their footsteps echoing in the dark tunnels. Jack led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he moved. Sarah and Elena followed closely, their eyes wide with fear and determination. The tunnel seemed to stretch on endlessly, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and strange noises echoed through the darkness. "Do you think we'll find another way out?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "We have to," Jack replied, his voice steady. "We can't give up now." As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the sense of dread grew stronger. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the temperature dropped to near freezing. They pressed on, their determination unshaken despite the overwhelming fear. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel, where a small opening led to the outside world. The sight of daylight filled them with a renewed sense of hope, and they scrambled through the opening, gasping for breath as they emerged into the sunlight. "We made it," Jack said, his voice filled with relief. "But we can't stop now. We need to find Marcus and Dr. Caldwell and get out of here." The team quickly retraced their steps, searching for the others. They moved cautiously, their senses on high alert for any signs of danger. As they approached the entrance of the mine, they heard the sounds of a struggle. Rushing forward, they found Marcus and Dr. Caldwell fighting off another wave of creatures. The team joined the battle, their combined strength finally driving the creatures back into the darkness. "We need to seal the mine," Jack said, his voice urgent. "It's the only way to stop them." Working together, they moved another large boulder into place, sealing the entrance to the mine. The creatures slammed against the barrier, their growls and screeches filling the air, but the team knew they had bought themselves some time. Exhausted and shaken, they made their way back to the town hall, their minds racing with the events of the day. They had uncovered part of Helltown's dark secrets, but they knew there was still much more to discover. As they regrouped, Jack looked around at his team, their faces determined and resolute. "We're not done yet," he said. "We have to finish what we started. We have to uncover the truth and put an end to this nightmare once and for all." Back at the town hall, the team regrouped to discuss their findings and plan their next steps. The harrowing experience in the mines had taken a toll on everyone, but they were resolute. Jack spread out the maps and data on the table, tracing the patterns of supernatural activity they had recorded. "We've only scratched the surface," Jack said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "There's more to Helltown than just the mines. We need to investigate the rest of the hotspots." Dr. Caldwell pointed to several locations on the map. "These areas have shown significant spikes in paranormal activity. The abandoned church, the old mill, and the cemetery. We should start there." Elena nodded, her expression serious. "There's a dark presence that lingers in these places. If we can uncover the source, we might be able to put an end to it. Sarah adjusted her gear, ready for the next challenge. Let's divide into teams again. We can cover more ground that way. Marcus agreed. We'll need to stay in constant communication. Any sign of trouble, we regroup immediately. They split into 2 teams. Jack, Sarah, and Elena would head to the abandoned church, while Marcus and Dr. Caldwell would investigate the old mill and cemetery. With a final check of their equipment, they set out into the night. The abandoned church loomed ahead, its once grand facade now crumbling and covered in ivy. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as the team approached the entrance. Jack pushed open the heavy wooden doors, which creaked ominously as they swung inward. Inside, the church was dark and silent, the only light coming from their flashlights. Pews were overturned, and broken stained glass littered the floor. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if the building itself was alive with malevolent energy. Elena paused, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the darkness. There's something here. I can feel it. Sarah scanned the room with her thermal camera. I'm not picking up any heat signatures, but that doesn't mean we're alone. Jack led the way to the altar, where strange symbols were carved into the stone. He took a few photos, documenting the eerie markings. These symbols are similar to the ones we saw in the mines, he said. It's all connected. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the church, extinguishing their flashlights. The team froze, their breath visible in the frigid air. A low, guttural growl echoed through the darkness, sending chills down their spines. Stay close, Jack whispered, his voice barely audible. The growl grew louder, and from the shadows emerged a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It was the Shadow Man, a harbinger of death and despair. The creature moved with fluid grace, its presence overwhelming. Elena, can you sense anything? Jack asked, his voice tense. Elena closed her eyes, focusing her energy. It's feeding off our fear. We have to remain calm and strong. The Shadow Man lunged at them, its form shifting and changing. Jack raised his camera, capturing the terrifying encounter as Sarah and Elena tried to fend it off. Elena focused her psychic abilities, channeling her energy to repel the creature. Back to the shadows, she commanded, her voice filled with authority. The Shadow Man hesitated, its form flickering as if caught between 2 worlds. Taking advantage of the momentary pause, Jack shouted, "This way." He led the team towards a small door at the back of the church, hoping to find an escape route. They stumbled through the door and into a narrow hallway. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, similar to those they had seen in the mines. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and the temperature continued to drop. "We need to find a way out," Jack said, his voice urgent. "We can't let it trap us here." They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the dark hallway. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and strange noises echoed through the darkness. As they reached the end of the hallway, they found a staircase leading down into the basement. "We have no choice," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We have to go down." They descended the staircase, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. The basement was a labyrinth of tunnels and rooms, filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. The sense of dread was overwhelming, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. In one of the rooms, they found an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. Jack picked it up, carefully flipping through the pages. The journal belonged to a priest who had once served at the church. His writings detailed strange occurrences and supernatural encounters, hinting at a dark secret buried beneath the town. "This is it," Jack said, his voice filled with determination. "We need to find the source of this darkness and put an end to it." Meanwhile, Marcus and Dr. Caldwell were investigating the old mill. The building was dilapidated, its walls covered in ivy and graffiti. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as they approached the entrance. "This place gives me the creeps," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Caldwell nodded. "Stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with." Inside, the mill was dark and silent, the only light coming from their flashlights. The air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked under their weight. They moved cautiously, scanning the room for any signs of supernatural activity. Suddenly, they heard a low, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. Marcus raised his EMF detector, which began to spike wildly. "We're not alone," he said, his voice trembling. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It was the Shadow Man, a harbinger of death and despair. The creature moved with fluid grace, its presence overwhelming. "Dr. Caldwell, get ready," Marcus said, his voice tense. They fought back, using their equipment to fend off the creature. Marcus fired his taser, striking the Shadow Man and sending it sprawling. Dr. Caldwell swung a makeshift weapon, striking the creature and driving it back into the darkness. "We need to find a way out," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "We can't let it trap us here." They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the dark mill. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and strange noises echoed through the darkness. As they reached the exit, they found themselves facing another wave of creatures, skinwalkers and crawlers, their forms shifting and changing. "We have to fight our way out," Dr. Caldwell said, his voice filled with determination. They fought with everything they had, their combined strength finally driving the creatures back. Exhausted and shaken, they stumbled out of the mill and into the night. They knew they had only just begun to uncover the dark secrets of Helltown, but they were determined to see it through to the end. Back at the town hall, the teams regrouped, sharing their findings and planning their next steps. They had uncovered part of Helltown's dark secrets, but they knew there was still much more to discover. "We're not done yet," Jack said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to finish what we started. We have to uncover the truth and put an end to this nightmare once and for all." Back at the town hall, the mood was somber yet resolute. The combined teams shared the harrowing details of their encounters with the Shadow Man, skinwalkers, and crawlers. Each revelation further solidified their understanding that Helltown was a battleground for ancient, malevolent forces. They knew they had to confront the source of the darkness head-on, or risk losing everything. Jack spread out the maps and data once more. "Based on our findings, the epicenter of the paranormal activity is the cemetery. It's the heart of this evil, where all the energy converges." Elena shuddered, her psychic senses already reeling from the thought of what lay ahead. "There's something ancient and malevolent buried there. We need to prepare for the worst." Dr. Caldwell and Marcus nodded in agreement, their faces set with determination. Sarah checked her equipment, ensuring everything was in working order. "Let's end this," she said, her voice firm. The team gathered their gear and set out for the cemetery. The night was eerily quiet as they approached the wrought iron gates. The moon cast long shadows over the gravestones, creating an atmosphere thick with dread. The cemetery was vast, with crumbling tombstones and mausoleums that spoke of a long-forgotten past. The air was heavy with the scent of decay and the oppressive weight of countless souls trapped between worlds. The team moved cautiously, their flashlights casting eerie beams of light across the landscape. "Stick together," Jack ordered, his voice low but commanding. "We can't afford to get separated." Elena's eyes darted around, sensing the presence of numerous spirits. "They're all around us, watching, waiting." Marcus held his EMF detector, which was already spiking wildly. "This place is a hotbed of activity. We're getting close." They reached the center of the cemetery, where an ancient, weathered mausoleum stood. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, similar to those they had seen in the mines and the church. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. "This is it," he said, "the source of the darkness." Elena stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "I can sense it. There's something beneath us. Something old and powerful." Dr. Caldwell examined the symbols, recognizing them from his research. These markings are a combination of ancient languages, a protective barrier to keep whatever's inside from escaping. Sarah placed her hand on the mausoleum's door, feeling a chill run through her. "We need to open it. Whatever's in there, we have to face it." With a collective effort, they pushed open the heavy stone door. A cold wind rushed out, carrying with it the scent of decay and something far more sinister. Inside, the darkness was impenetrable, but their flashlights revealed a staircase leading down into the earth. The descent was slow and cautious. The air grew colder and more oppressive with each step. Strange whispers echoed through the darkness, the voices of the restless dead. At the bottom of the staircase, they found a large chamber filled with ancient artifacts and more of the strange symbols. In the center of the chamber lay a stone sarcophagus, its lid covered in intricate carvings. Elena placed her hand on the sarcophagus, her eyes widening in horror. "It's a gateway. The sarcophagus is the seal." Before they could react, the chamber was filled with an unearthly roar. The shadows coalesced into the form of the Shadow Man, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. Behind it, the crawlers and skinwalkers emerged from the darkness, their twisted forms a mockery of humanity. "We have to seal the gateway," Jack shouted. "It's the only way to stop them." The team sprang into action. Marcus and Sarah used their equipment to fend off the creatures, while Jack and Dr. Caldwell worked to decipher the carvings on the sarcophagus. Elena focused her psychic energy, trying to hold back the tide of darkness. "It's too strong," Elena cried, her voice strained. "I can't hold it for long." Jack and Dr. Caldwell worked frantically, their hands shaking as they traced the symbols. "We need to activate the seal," Dr. Caldwell said. "It's the only way to close the gateway permanently." As the Shadow Man lunged towards them, Jack shouted, "Now!" He and Dr. Caldwell pressed their hands against the sarcophagus, channeling their energy into the carvings. The chamber was filled with a blinding light as the seal activated. The Shadow Man and its minions screamed in agony, their forms dissolving into the darkness. The ground shook, and the air was filled with the sound of ancient chains locking into place. Elena collapsed, exhausted from the effort. "It's done," she whispered. "The gateway is sealed." The team emerged from the mausoleum, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and quiet. They had done it. They had defeated the darkness that had plagued Helltown for centuries. Back at the town hall, they regrouped, sharing their experiences and reflecting on the journey. They had lost friends along the way, but their sacrifice had not been in vain. "We did it," Jack said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We stopped the darkness." Dr. Caldwell nodded. "Helltown is free, thanks to all of you. This place can finally heal." Elena smiled weakly. "The spirits are at rest. We can move on now." As they packed up their gear, ready to return to their lives, they knew they had formed a bond that would never be broken. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. The haunting of Helltown was over, but the memory of their bravery would live on forever.